Now, okay, what is that all about? Why is John emphasizing this? Why bring it up? It's producing its fruit each month, right? There's 12 months. Is it one fruit each month? I think what's suggested here, based on the symbology of the 12, is the perfection for sustenance, but also, when you think about it, and you think about fruit trees, there's only certain times when fruit is in season. Right? So certain fruits at different seasons. But here, with the fruit being produced each month, there is no specific fruit season. It's always available. And when we think about it, we're talking about a time now where time has ended. And so, in eternity, the time is always now. It's never then. Right? You're not looking forward to apple picking season because it's apple picking season now. You're not looking forward to when the peaches, right? Because it's now. Right? There is no then in the past. There is no then in the future. And so the tree of life is constantly in season, providing all sorts of sustenance and variety for those who have the ability to access it. Not only is the fruit good in producing life, even the leaves are useful. The leaves are for the healing of the nations. Now, in one sense, we would say, well, now wait a second. We're talking here after the last judgment. So we're talking about a time of resurrection. And I would say we probably get the idea in Scripture that the resurrected bodies we will have will be perfect. No illness, no sickness, no death. So what kind of healing would these leaves be doing? Yeah, essentially what we're seeing is that kind of what is symbolized here is this spiritual healing. That might have some ideas of physical healing as well, right? That it's not so much that there will be deficiencies in the resurrected body as it is meant to communicate that all the pain and the sorrow we experience now will be undone, will be changed in the resurrection. And so all the pain that we feel as individuals, all the pain that we have in our society, in a collective nations, that's the leaves of the tree of life will undo that, will heal it. And so this physical healing might be part of it, but more the spiritual, emotional healing. Everything we encounter in the first earth will be undone in the next. Additionally, John notes that nothing accursed will be found there anymore. Now, in one sense, we might take accursed in the sense of things God despises. And so it might be, right, those things are for the lake of fire, and so they're not in the New Jerusalem. Or we could think of it as a revocation of the curse that God put on Adam and Eve back in Genesis chapter 3. Right? That he curses Adam and Eve, curses the ground because of their sin. And so there is no curse anymore. And all the things that come out of the curse, presence of sin, physical death, broken relationships, all sorts of other things we could list that come out of the curse are non-existent anymore. Furthermore, within this city is the throne of God, and the throne of God and the throne of the Lamb. In case you haven't gotten it yet, readers of Revelation, God is going to be there. All right? So once again, we're told several times in different ways that God will be present, God will be in control, which serves as a nice epilogue to the throne room scene in chapter 4. John is taken up to heaven. He sees the throne room in kind of this separated type of way, right? The sea being there, God being high and lifted up, and still, God will be exalted and will be holy and lifted up. But there will be a closeness there. And because of the presence of God, those that live in the New Jerusalem will worship Him. The response to God's presence, as we've seen throughout this book, is worship. Now, does that mean heaven is but one big worship service? And that's what it'll all be. Perhaps, perhaps not. Right? I wouldn't take that too far. But the idea is, as we've seen throughout, when you really understand what God is doing, the appropriate response is to worship. And so, by God being there in the presence of His people, close, the response is worship. And that closeness is evidenced in the fact that those of His servants will see His face. There are several places in the Bible where it's noted that no one could see the face of God and live, or that no one has seen the face of God. And we can find several passages. But in the New Jerusalem, the faithful will. The people in the New Jerusalem will see the face of God. And you're kind of given the image here of access, right? God on His throne. And you're seeing the face of God. It's like somebody coming before the king, having an audience with the king, and you're seeing His face. An openness, an absolute trust that's there, because you have access to the king. Not only will they see His face, they will also bear the name of God on their foreheads. Something we had seen way back in chapter 7 with the marking of the 144,000. But those ideas of possession, ownership, identification, only those who belong to God will be there. We're once again reminded that there will be no more night, perpetually day. Probably here meant to play off of the light-darkness pairing to the righteous-unrighteous pairing, right? Light equaling righteousness, darkness equaling sinfulness. Not only is there no more night, there's, as we've seen before, there's no need for certain sources of light. Right? There would be no more sun, no more moon, because the Lord God is the light. So everything that's needed, although in a sense nothing's really needed, everything that's needed God will provide in the New Jerusalem. And the faithful, those who see God's face, whose name is on their forehead, will reign forever and ever. Christ had promised the Christians by Thyatira back in chapter 2 that they would rule over the nations. We saw the souls reigning in chapter 20, the 1,000-year reign. But who are they reigning over? If every saint is reigning, who are they reigning over? All right? I mean, there's the lake of fire, and there's really not any reigning over that, so it's just like, you get to be king today, and then tomorrow I'll be king, and then next week it's Chase's turn, and probably not. I think probably, it says reign, and we go, okay, the idea here probably is more suggestive of victory than a reigning like a king. I'm king over this space in the New Jerusalem. Right? And so the idea would be probably, they reign with him in the idea of celebration of victory. God's won. God has demonstrated himself being king. The angel still has some more things to tell John. And once again, it is an assurance that what is being said, what he's being told, what he sees, is trustworthy. Right? There's that assurance. Now, is this an assurance that John needs? No, probably not. But instead, it's the angel speaking to John to assure the readers of Revelation that these things are true. Ultimately, claiming that these words come from God, and it is God who is the spirit of the prophet, or that it is God of the spirits of the prophets who has sent his angel to show his servants. And so God, the information, the source of information that the prophets received. I think the translation Hunter was reading for talked about the inspiring of the prophets. Right? And so he's sent his angel to tell those prophets, especially John, this message. And so when the prophet speaks on behalf of God, it is God who is inspiring that prophet. But the things that the prophets are to know, and what's being shown, is what must soon take place. So the things in this prophecy that we've been looking at for these past several weeks are the things that must soon take place. And in fact, 4 times here in this chapter, it will be emphasized that certain actions, certain events will happen soon. In fact, right after it said that these must soon take place, we are told, probably from Jesus, although there isn't a marker in Revelation that the narrative is switched, but it is said, "See, I am coming soon." So again, this emphasis on the coming of Jesus being soon. So, what does this mean? What does it mean that these things must soon take place? What does it mean that Jesus is coming soon? We might say, like some, that what's emphasized here in the word soon is God time. Right? A day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. And so when God says soon, it doesn't mean soon. Like if we were going to say, this class is going to end soon, we wouldn't be thinking, well, it's going to end in a week, all right? Or a month. Right? And so how close is soon? But when we think about this, even though we have this one option of thinking, okay, he's talking God time, we also have to think, all right, when the original hearers, readers of this, received this document, what is it meant to convey to them? If soon meant 2,000 plus years, what message does that provide of comfort for them? And so one of the things we have a difficulty with is that when you look at verse 7, "See, I am coming soon," it sounds like second coming. But for them, the second coming was not soon. The second coming has been a long time. Because I think that we're not using God time here. That instead it's meant to communicate something to them that they could understand. John is then told, right, "See, I'm coming soon." It's kind of a warning, right? Because the next part is, "Blessed is the one who keeps the words of the prophecy of this book." Because Jesus is coming soon, you're going to be blessed if you obey this book, right? If you keep the words of this book. The sixth of the 7 Beatitudes in Revelation. And so it's because of Jesus' impending arrival, his impending coming, that the one who keeps these words will be blessed. But when we think about it, once we get past chapters 2 and 3, there are not a lot of commands. It's just visions. And so when we think about it, keep probably means obey, but there's not a lot of commands. So is it just those commands? Or should we understand that there are a lot of implicit commands in this book? You know, that in a warning about something happening, there is a command understood. Right? It's like if you're a little kid and you want to go out on your bike and your parent says to you, people that go out without their helmet often end in accidents. Not that your parents say it like that. I don't know how poorly worded. The idea being, put your helmet on. Right? But did they say that explicitly? No. And so we can think of where you're not explicitly stating a command. So what are the implicit commands here? Don't follow the beast. Right? Don't get caught up with Babylon. And so there's a lot of commands here, even though we might not be able to, after chapter 3, point to some specific commands. So the one who keeps those words, who follows them, is going to be blessed. Why are they going to be blessed? You know, they'll escape the second death. They'll be able to participate in the heavenly Jerusalem. And so there's a blessing there to be mindful of. As we get into verse 8, John confirms that he is the one who heard and saw these things. Right? We have confirmation from the author. He's not talking about something somebody else experienced. But this is something that has happened to him. But it had so moved him that once again he attempts to worship the angelic messenger who is providing this guidance. And once again, what does the angel tell him? He goes to worship the angel. What does the angel respond? Right? This is not appropriate action. Right? And so once again, John has to be reminded he's not to worship this angel. So it is an angel, even though it's serving as a messenger of God. It's there on God's behalf, probably in how it looks very awe-inspiring, powerful, but still, the angel notes that it is but simply a servant like John is, like the other prophets are, like Christians are. Right? He is just a messenger, just like John is a messenger.